Hey, everybody, it's Craig Syracusa, Walk in Faith. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'm excited. This is a big one. I have the masterpiece, the author, Cliff Shiepe. This is an award-winning novel. Like I said, and my mom said, this is a masterpiece. Cliff, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, great to be here. Great to be here, Craig.
So now, just so we get, you're in LA, right? You're in California right now?
Yeah, I'm in Pasadena, like right by the Rose Bowl, just
Very
down the street.
nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. I know we've been trying to sort of coordinate this, but I really appreciate you sitting down with me. Thank you so much.
Look forward to it, man.
So,
Look forward
so
to the
tell,
conversation.
so tell me now, this book, right, Cliff Falls, this is the Missing Pieces edition, and this was
Yeah.
released originally, well, I like to call it the masterpiece, in
Yeah.
2010, right?
Yeah.
So why did you decide to sort of revisit this novel? Has anything changed within the book?
Yeah. It's a crazy thing. I spent about 8 years on the road speaking at colleges, treatment places, recovery places. And I didn't expect the book to take off the way it had. And all that speaking, I had an insight into what it was that was impacting lives. And I was going to do an anniversary edition, and I got an idea to take it to a new level. And I spent about 3 years expanding and revising the novel. It's a complete revision. And I call it the missing pieces that were left out before. And it's a novel concept. We all have pieces we hold back that we're afraid to share with the world. And so that was the idea I came up with. And it's having a great impact. I was, a little nervous about doing this. Even my mom's like, "You're going to rewrite a book that's already been a bestseller?" I'm like, yeah. So, but it ended up being, it was counterintuitive, but it ended up being the best thing I could have done.
I love that you said, a lot of us are afraid to sort of share our story, our testimony. Even myself, like when I say certain things where I wrote an article recently and my mom called me and said, "Why did you write that? Why did you say those things?" And you forget the impact that you have when you write, because sometimes you're exposing, or the mask that we hide behind. We have this persona that we have on Facebook or Instagram. And then there's that real self that we need to share, because it's through your story, your testimony, that leads people to Christ, that makes them self-examine their own life. I mean, in case I know my mom is watching this and she read the book, but in case there are a few people that are not familiar with this masterpiece, can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, it's about a former child star, the former child star syndrome. And this character, Clay Grant, he started this fire by accident on the night of his 18th birthday. And then he disappeared from culture and society. And the tagline is, "What happens when you run into everything you've been running from?" And essentially, it's this child star who was a performer who just wants a normal life. And he's going to have to enter all his pain and all his fear in the hopes of being transformed and discovering what life really is. And it takes place kind of an intersection between Hollywood, the secular world, and the faith world. And that kind of collision has been something that's been real fun to play with, and people have responded to.
It's funny, when I first started in the business, like, I am 40 now, so I guess I could say when I started, but I used to always say, the way you connect the two is through, say, the world of faith and Hollywood. You just build a bridge, because there are such people. First of all, it's an easy way to sort of get people to pay attention to what we want to, what we're trying to say, the message. And that's what you did in a sense with this book. But were you concerned at all about, in a sense, you're not exploiting, but you're showing how child stars are exploited in the business, because it's something that is not always spoken about. But you go into pretty much detail in this. Were you concerned about that at all?
I wasn't concerned. My first concern was that most people can't see themselves in the life of a child star. Most of us think of them as train wrecks. They entertained us when they were young, and then they grow up and screw up, and we're like, "Oh gosh, look what's happened to, fill in the blank, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, whoever it might be." And so my fear was that people wouldn't identify with the child star. But as a little background, I was working at Disney out of college. And I knew some child stars. And there was one who was the most popular kid in the 90s. I don't want to say his name just out of respect, but I mean, most of the girls had posters of him. I mean, he was just, when he'd appear someplace, it was crazy. And he was kind of a sad kid. His dad wasn't in his life. The executive that I worked for would take him like fishing and camping. And I couldn't get over the difference between the public persona of his life and the internal reality. Mm. And in that moment, I just thought, whoa, isn't that all of us? Isn't that all of us? I mean, maybe even just junior high school, right? Where you have this public persona and you're struggling insecure inside and needing to have your outside world and inside world match, like that struggle. So that was what kind of launched this whole idea. And I thought, ooh, the secular world and the faith world, fish out of water, perfect. Two different worlds colliding. That's kind of a recipe for Hollywood, right? What I discovered was how similar the two worlds were at times. And some of the production values of these overproduced church services. They're so desperate to be relevant and be authentic, we're going to produce it. When you have somebody who's just looking for something that is real. You said something really interesting. You said, we need to share those pieces of ourselves, to share Christ, to share our hearts with people, to reach the world. And you're absolutely right. But we also need to share those pieces of ourselves so we can experience love. Mm. When we have that persona, when we show that strong self, at best, people will love us for that persona. And we can never experience that kind of unconditional love that just lets you exhale and say, oh, I'm okay in my skin for however long I have to go and transform and, you know, be conformed into who God created me to be. Right now, I can exhale right where I'm at. So, yeah, it's crazy. The incarnations, even before the first book, this started around 2000 with a TV treatment, and I got pretty far with it. But in every incarnation, it got deeper and richer. And part of my story got into the book. It's amazing how you will think that you're done with something and you put it out in the world, and God kind of calls you to revisit it. And say, I'm not done yet. And it gets refined and refined and refined over years. And then finally you start seeing people respond in the way you hope they would when you were sitting on a old crappy, your first laptop going, oh, this, you know, when am I going to be done? This is going to be out soon. Oh, hopefully it will work. Hopefully it will work.
That's interesting. I mean, you said so many important things. I mean, even adults, let's say celebrities or stars, a lot of them hide behind this, well, they've created this persona, and they must sort of lose sight of who they are. You know, at some point they must look and say, who am I? You know, because they have this, they've created this sort of this person and or character, and at some point they don't even really know who they are. It's whatever the world has sort of created. And we were talking off camera. I remember, I can't even tell you how long ago, but Justin Bieber, we were working with him at MSG and playing basketball with him, and he was a kid, and there was nobody there. We were shooting around with him, and he was so cool. He was just a kid. And I went home to my life, and when I thought about it, I said, well, where is he going? You know, and you could see he wasn't on. He was just a kid playing basketball. But then he had his 20 Wranglers, and he went on, and God only knows where he went. And then he put out this video, Lonely, I think it is. And I started to think about your book and that lifestyle. And I remember praying, God, I want to be famous. I want to be this. I want to be all that, right? Because you only see the side that they want you to see. You don't see the side of the depression, the anxiety, the no family, no friends running around. No, you don't see that relationship that's sort of missing. And then he put out that song, and I said, I am blessed that God did not answer that prayer, because I don't think I would be as strong as some of these celebrities where they're able to sort of overcome that. I think I would be one of these Macaulay Culkin stories where you look back and say, what happened to him? Because that's not publicized. But we know that it is a very difficult business.
What's crazy is the desire isn't necessarily bad. God gave us a desire to be seen, to be known, to be recognized. But to then say that the fulfillment of that is celebrity is a big leap. We're supposed to be seen and known by our loved ones, our family, our neighbors, our church family. It's in community. It's in community. I ran into Justin Bieber once on Sunset Boulevard in a pizza shop. He came in with Scooter, and he was in a hoodie. I didn't even know who he was. I mean, he was a really young kid. It was a long time ago, small kid. And everybody was like, you know, making noise. And he was a real polite kid, got his pizza, they ate it fast and got in the car. And on the ride home, I heard on the news that there just had been a scuffle at LAX with him and Scooter, and there was something that had happened, and they kind of pushed back, you know. And I'm like, boy, if I got into a scuffle in junior high school, yeah, the neighborhood would know. Maybe eventually, maybe we'd get to my mom before I got home, but every movement, the world would know.
Mm-hmm.
And there wouldn't have been a financial interest in it. These kids, a whole machine is built around them. A whole business entity where they end up becoming a product
Mm-hmm.
in this entity. Even if nowadays it's so much, you know, there are some protections and wonderful protections, and they make much better money than former child stars used to make. But the idea that you're a product, so the people that started kind of connecting with this weren't just kind of the screw up kids. They were also the kids who were the star basketball player or the great kid in high school in, you know, math or science, where your identity is built on performance.
Mm.
And what I realized is they were just the opposite side of the same coin. Whether your identity is being the screw up or being the overachiever kind of good kid, which I at least thought I was, whether I was or not, I don't know. That's not the core of your identity. It's not who you are. It's what you do, but it's not who you are. And there's a big difference. And that's ultimately what this book is about. Understanding your identity as a beloved child of God. Mm. And that can sound, okay, religious, and what do you mean by that? The funniest thing is my book is always in the books to change your life section or the general fiction section. It's not in the Christian section, even though faith is the core of the transformation. I have Jewish followers. I mean, tons of atheists love this book. Yes, all the Christians, right? Not all the Christians. That's a stretch. Yet.
Not yet. We'll get them.
Yeah. But when you present something that's real, people connect with it. People will connect with it. And hopefully that's what I've done. I didn't pick. Everyone wanted me to pick a market. You know, I would have been successful much earlier and maybe more successful had I made it kind of Christianese and just for that market, or had I gone all spiritual, Lion King, Oprah, you know, circle of life, be very vague.
The universe.
The universe. I'm like, who made the universe? You know, here's my whole thing on the universe. And God love people where they're at. I speak to a lot of 12-step programs. The irony that I'm speaking to recovery and I've never done a drug in my life, like, you know, I barely drink. God will put you in all sorts of places. And I feel so at home in those places because these people are so real. They have no airs. They're not trying to justify what they've done or who they are. They just are honest. But I just totally blanked where I was going with that. But in these areas, you see people connect to the message. And when they need it to be true, to understand who they are. So
I love it. I love it. I love you too.
Yeah.
You sort of talking about the question, universal question, who am I? You know, and the answer that most people give is, well, I play basketball or I'm an actor, not, you know, we're not asking what you do. Who am I? You know?
Oh.
So how do you promote a book? I mean, I love, you know, COVID, you know, 2020, it's the new sort of, you know, perfect vision, the new vision, but then COVID hits. And we know being in this business, I mean, I'm in an office doing interviews now when I used to be in person. How did you adjust, or did you start to question and say, God, is this what you're really calling me to do? I mean, now that there's a pandemic.
There were so many roadblocks. And I remembered where I was going with that last point to backtrack one moment, the universe. And the way I address that question is when you stub your toe, you don't cry out for the universe. You cry out for your mom, and she has a name. Mom, help me, I stubbed my toe, right? It's a personal, the creator of the universe. That's in the weeds of what I want to get to, or I was trying to get to. But yes, I have had so many roadblocks. When this book was re-released, everything looked bright and rosy. People were once they read it, they were excited. At first they were like, what did you do? What's the difference? How is it? And so I had bookstores that wanted me to speak. I had events that wanted me to speak. I had just been in Nashville, with Amy Grant.
We love Amy Grant.
I love Amy Grant.
Baby,
amazing. Baby, leave me on. She is just, when you talk about real, and as someone who just reminds us all what is real, that's Amy Grant. Beautiful on the inside and out. But I had all these things happening. And when COVID hit, I was going to have a news media was going to do a mini documentary on me, and at a bookstore in the Books to Change Your Life section. And the day before, the bookstore had to call it off. They're like, we're shutting down. And so everything had just come to such a halt. And I was like, okay, I did not come this far to get discouraged. If I have anything, hopefully I have talent, but I have resilience. That's something that God has, refined in me as he does in all of us, if we kind of lean into it. And I said, this book doesn't have to make $1 zillion. I just want the right people who need to hear the message that's in it to get a hold of it. Whatever that looks like. That was my goal. So I said, what can we do differently? And I haven't gone the route that most authors have, doing like virtual book signings. And I mean, there's a place for all that. But I said, let's just impact lives. What can we do? And the biggest thing I did was produce the audiobook. And that was just released, and real proud of that. That was something.
Well, you have
special.
to tell us the name. I mean, I know, but you have to let the world know.
Yeah. So I spent about 2 years going, who am I going to get to narrate this? I had done some acting when I was younger. I speak places, but I knew this is a special talent to be able to do the different characters and go from the narrator to one character to the other. And everyone I listened to was so impersonal. I'm like, this is a book about connection, empathy, life change. And then I heard this voice, and I didn't know who he was. His name's Santino Fontana. And he does audiobooks for Stephen King. He just did the prequel of The Hunger Games. But he was also the bad prince in Frozen, a little movie called Frozen. And he had just won a Tony on Broadway for Tootsie. He is a huge Broadway star. Very few people do straight plays and musicals. He was in Cinderella. He was on TV in My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. He played a very popular role in that. And had it not been for COVID, I probably couldn't have gotten him. I mean, this is a very expensive endeavor, and these guys are booked. And he does so many other things. But he was so gracious to read the book, and he said, yes, I'm in. Wow. I'm in. And the reviews of the audiobook alone have been off the chart. Amazing. I mean, I give that so much to Santino. We had to virtually produce it. He was in Maine, quarantined with his wife and, young daughter. I think she's like, barely a year old. And I'm in LA, and my sound engineer's on Melrose. And some days I listen to 11 hours of takes. Wow. I mean, he would give me multiple takes on a line, I mean, after a while, you're like, wow, okay, whoa. Isn't that crazy?
That's a lot. But but look, you're right. I mean, there's a pandemic, we're not taking anything away from that, but there are always an opportunity during a crisis. And the one thing I've been talking about is this is the time where you need to plant seeds. You can literally get on the phone with anyone. Everyone is in the same sort of, I don't want to say same boat because we're all in different situations, but we're all trying to figure it out. And like you took a chance, you reached out to someone like Santino who wouldn't be available, right? If it wasn't for COVID. And but you can see how God is just playing a part in this whole thing.
I needed music in the beginning, and I wanted something that was composed. And there was this Hollywood, Mark Killian. He's a Hollywood composer who works with Martin Scorsese.
Wow.
I mean, Platinum Album, Pitch Perfect. I got a hold of him. I'm like, I got $1,000. I need it in 6 days, and you're not going to own it. He's like, I'm in. I'm not doing anything. I'm in. He wrote the most incredible opening.
Amazing.
He tells the story of Cliff Falls in 43 seconds.
Amazing.
You hear the falls, you hear the danger, there's a cello, you hear the church bell, and so we just feel like we're getting one step closer to limited series film.
I know you see, that's something I was wondering. I mean, first of all, this book has been Bishops, Amy Grant. I mean, there's so many people that have endorsed this book, that are pushing the book. So we know it's organic. We know God's behind this. So you think this would potentially be like when life gets back to normal, it would be a film or a TV show?
Yes, because it started that way. My whole background was television. I didn't know I was going to be an author. And some life circumstances that isolated me in my 20s made me kind of hunker down and write. But it's very cinematic. And I wrote a limited series, 6 hours last year. And we had a few people, and then COVID hit. So now we're kind of talking virtually. I have a handful of people that I ideally would like to be involved. Because like you want it to be a good film. Mm-hmm. You don't want to just make it to make it. So you can never guarantee it's going to be a great film or TV show, but if you get the right talent involved, the probability is so much higher.
You're right.
So I am working on that kind of nonstop, and we can talk off camera, but there are some very familiar names that I think, you'd be like, yes. Hopefully they'll say yes. Yeah.
Listen, I'll be praying for you. I mean, if you need an extra or anyone or a one line
extra,
I'm always available for you.
And we used to call them under fives. They give you under 5 lines. You get a.
But no, my cousin's AD. He calls them atmosphere. I said atmosphere.
Oh yeah. I did some of that in my 20s. I had under 5 lines on a soap. It was crazy. French accent.
So Cliff, tell us before we run. Tell us if there's one thing you hope the audience walks away with after reading this book. What would it be?
Yeah, I think. Someone came up to me after a talk and said, I found a new application for your book. She said she always wanted to be a space engineer. And then JPL and NASA had these cuts and she lost her job. And she said, I didn't lose my job. What I lost was my identity. And this book is something you can give to someone who is struggling with their sense of self. It's almost a self-help book in a way. We all go over the falls in life. That's the metaphor. We're separated from things we put our identity in. And that's an opportunity to discover who you are and what is life-giving. And so my hope is that, you get a hold of the book and you go on that healing journey. And I've heard from people all around the country, all around the world who have done that. And that's what's the most gratifying for me. And that's the only reason I'm doing this. It's the only reason I'm in it. Never thought I'd be an author. Don't have an identity about, I'm not in a smoking jacket with a pipe going, I'm the author. And whenever they say it's the author, I always look behind me going, what are they talking about?
That's good. But listen, you're right. I mean, this COVID, this season has exposed a lot. And I think a lot of people are sort of looking at their own life saying, is this what I'm called to do? Like, what is my purpose? What's my calling? Whether you want to call it the universe or not, God, we know there is a calling and a purpose for our lives, right? And I think a lot of people, since everything has been stripped away, will be idolized, will be worshipped, celebrities, whatever it was, sports, you're really looking at yourself saying, what am I supposed to do with my life? What am I called to do? What is my purpose? Because you can't have, your identity can't be in a job, just some job. It needs to be in your work. And there's a big difference between a job and work.
Yeah, and sometimes God is up to something bigger than what we think.
Mm.
I mean, we may think if we're sick, okay, I just need to get well, or we just need the COVID to be over, and we just need this problem to work out with my job. Sometimes he's building resilience in you. Sometimes he's building a quality in you that's life-giving because he cares about you.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be open to something that's going on that you can't see right away, and kind of submitting to that mystery that maybe something bigger is going on.
Agree.
And that's good.
That is. Well, Cliff, it's a pleasure. I love the book. If you get a chance, can you get me one for my son Mario? I know
I'm sending it.
we love books. We love to collect them. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please, I mean, Cliff, now where could people, find the book? Can you share websites and social media platforms?
Yeah. Go to Cliff Falls, CliffFalls, cliffalls.com. All the information about the audiobook, the Kindle, and the paperback are there, and you can get it on Amazon. And make sure you get the Missing Pieces edition. That's a special one. And Craig, thank you so much. I so appreciate what you do, and I follow you because you know that I like the things on social media. It's just so, again, to use the phrase, life-giving.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I discovered my purpose according to God's plan for my life. And it's something that I wake up in the morning, and it's just, I have to do it, and I think when you could discover what you just have to do, like that burning sensation, you don't know why. I mean, I know why, but you don't know why you just wake up. Once you find and discover that, it's life-changing. And I hope everyone can discover that. And I think reading this masterpiece again, I think, if you could help one or two people just sort of find their identity or be open about their journey, like you said, I mean, the storm is really our testimony, and we need to be open to sharing that story because we can help somebody else. We really
including ourselves.
Exactly. Well, Cliff, thank you so much, guys. Please support Cliff, support the book, and always remember, guys, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through your words and actions. God bless you.
Amen.